We're good. We're rolling.
I'd like to call this meeting of the Ledger Town Council to order. Roxanne, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Davis,
Here.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Here.
Mrs. Evans. is
Here.
Here. There you are. Mrs. Ingalls,
Here.
Mr. Marshall,
Here.
Mrs. McGrattan,
Here.
Mr. Ryan, Mr. Soms,
Here.
Mr. Washington.
Here.
8 here, 1 absent.
Thank you. At this time, the mayor is going to give a proclamation.
Thank you and good evening, everybody. And you will see that we are joined by Naomi Rodriguez and Aidan Schuler. And Aidan, it's great to see you tonight. I'm looking forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Aidan is going to be coming in to receive his proclamation in the office tomorrow. But this is something that was well-deserved and, more importantly, well-earned by Aidan. So on July 7th, I believe it was, Aidan received his Congressional Award from Congressman Courtney, which was a great event. I'm sorry that I wasn't there to attend that, but we wanted to make sure that we recognized Aidan's achievements too. Aidan's really a superstar in town, and he's going to be going places. So I'm going to share with you just really quickly some of his accomplishments, and these are not all of them, but you will be shocked to see how much he has done. So Aidan completed 100 hours of public service at the Bill Library. He achieved his physical fitness goals through golf under the tutelage of Chris Hedden, who is down at what is it? Not Broadbrook. I'm thinking of the one down there on Route 184, and the name escapes me. Aidan attended music lessons for percussion under the tutelage of Bob Kennan for his personal development requirements. He embarked on 2 days and a one-night trip to Yosemite National Park for his expedition requirement. He completed an internship with Amigos de las Americas for 1 semester. He created the Ledger Cross-Generational Project, which is a letter writing initiative connecting 6th grade students to the Ledger's more experienced generation. And he also participated in the Day Newspaper Youth Journalist Initiative, where I came across Aidan in some of his work, authored multiple articles and mentored 2 students in the program. So we're excited to have Aidan receive this award, and he's going to be receiving a proclamation, like I said, from the mayor's office tomorrow. I wish Aidan nothing but the best as he heads off to Tufts University this year. And I am very much looking forward to seeing what you do going forward, Aidan. You've accomplished so much already, and I know there's so much more coming, so congratulations.
Congratulations. If we were meeting in person, you would hear a whole lot of clapping, but we can clap virtually for you. Thank you. If you are in this meeting and you are not speaking, could I ask that you please mute yourself, because it does cause some echoing at times. Thank you. Chairman Angelini, we would thank you for being here and ask you for your report at this time.
Thank you, Mrs. Davis. As I'm sure you know, I chaired the ad hoc committee for zoning regulations pertaining to agricultural use in town. The committee was made up of members from the Agricultural Commission, Economic Development, Planning and Zoning, Mr. Dombrowski from Town Council, and as well as from the community at large. We worked from January through June to develop a modified draft of the proposed regulations that Planning and Zoning had published last summer. We had received what I felt like was a good amount of public feedback on those. And in the 6 months that we were given we were able to work our way through the draft, make a number of edits and suggestions, and what we forwarded to town council was, what we felt like an improved draft. It's certainly not a final version by any means, and I feel proud of the work that we were able to produce. There was nothing unanimous about it. There was a good amount of disagreement as we worked through the process, but the discussion that was had was very helpful. And I hope that it provides a strong foundation as we move forward in the process. Mr. Allen, did you have a question or?
No, I'm sorry. I was just adjusting something. I didn't have my.
I can't tell if your hand was raised. Sorry.
We all have a copy of the report. It is available online for anyone here. If you are you finished, Allyson? Because I was going to ask if anybody on your committee had anything to add.
I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yes, and also answer questions. Anyone from the committee have anything they would like to add?
I just want to say I want to thank everyone on the committee who came together. I think, probably our first meeting was contentious, but, I was proud of the way the group came together and worked through the problems in order to, address what actually is needed in town and what can serve the farmers and, actually be something that is implementable and work for everybody. And so, I thought that the committee did exactly what it was asked to do, and I'm proud of what we put together. Like Allyson said, I think we made a lot of ground and discussed a lot of things that hadn't been discussed previously. So I think it was very productive.
Thank you. Anyone else on the committee have anything to add? Do any town councilors have any questions? Okay. Thank you for being here.
Miss Ingalls has a question.
I'm sorry, who?
Andra.
Linda.
Whoops, I'm sorry. Oh, Andra?
That's okay. At the risk of asking you all to rehash a meeting, I do have one question about the 100-foot setback, because it's something that when I read the proposed draft, I'm not a farmer, so I didn't understand where that came from, though I do assume that those things are certainly not arbitrary. And it is to my understanding, it was the issue that probably got the most pushback. So Ms. Angelini, can you shed some light on what that discussion tease out for us, what was discussed for and against the setback?
Sure. So my understanding is that that initial draft that was put out by Planning and Zoning last summer was gleaned from a number of other zoning regulations in neighboring towns. It wasn't necessarily written specifically for Ledyard. I agree with you that seemed to be the number one point of contention, and the ad hoc committee unanimously removed that on our first pass through the through working our way through the regulation. We had consulted specialists in the state. We had Joe Nichols come from the Connecticut Farm Bureau, and it simply doesn't serve farmers, but it also doesn't serve the town to have such a wide setback. What that would do in reducing that grazing space for animals, you're at risk of encouraging wild invasives to take over along all of the main roads in town, which would not improve the agricultural image that I think so many people value when they think of Ledyard.
Were you going to follow up, Andra? Because I certainly was. I think the confusion was we received a letter saying that it had not been removed. And I didn't go back and look to see if it had, although I thought it had been removed. Was that your confusion, Counselor Ingalls?
Yeah, in part from, it seemed from, I think, do I see Miss Parkinson on the call? I thought I saw her name.
Yeah.
Oh, I do see her. Okay. So Miss Parkinson submitted a letter too saying that the setback issue was not addressed by the committee. And so that did confuse me. But I'd also just like to better understand the benefit, because in Miss Parkinson's letter, she also mentioned that the setback be on the side of the developer. So there's clearly more to this conversation than meets the eye. And certainly, again, I'm not a farmer, so there's way more to this than I understand. And I would just like to hear more from different angles. Thank you.
You know, in my opinion, the task that we were given to go through the agricultural regulations was a large enough one. So we did not make any suggestions in terms of new developments or any areas outside of particularly agriculture. You know, we really just focused in, just as we had decided as a committee not to discuss any of the regulations pertaining to home husbandry. It was more of the, you know, farm business. And, you know, from what planning and zoning had told us was specifically event-based agriculture were where there were the most concerns. So that was where our committee focused. There was this chorus of discontent among livestock farmers that we heard repeatedly throughout the process. But in terms of the zoning regulations that were suggested by the ad hoc committee pertaining to livestock, they included a line saying that animal waste should be properly stored and disposed according to the Director of Health. That you know, they have to follow public health code in terms of keeping livestock and all the other regulations that the state has. You know, the living quarters for livestock can't create public health hazard or nuisance. And all animals should be suitably and adequately controlled at all times. You know, they can't be allowed to roam freely into the streets or neighboring properties. And there was also a line about drainage to protect water in town. You know, the rest of the regulations that were included in the draft were largely focused around events.
So if I can, Allyson, I might be able to give Ms. Ingalls a little bit of the history on that. And so Allison's completely right. So that regulation comes directly from Groton's current zoning regulations. And the reason that it was included in the draft is because every time you know, ag regs get discussed, the question of buffering comes up. And that's really why it was in there, was to make sure that there is a discussion about buffering. You know, this is every time it's discussed, it gets bounced back and forth between, you know, it should be on the ag side, it should be on the development side. I don't think anyone's ever come up with a great solution that works for everybody. You know, I think the right to farm legislation exists to, you know, to try to minimize as many conflicts as there can be at those borders. But the reason that was in there was simply to, you know, have a discussion and to recognize the fact that, you know, buffering at that boundary is something to consider.
Thank you.
So I just want to make sure I understand completely, because I think this is something, Nate, that I heard you say early on, that it was in the draft. And it was in the draft just to provoke discussion, which it certainly did. So that's my understanding. And there's still not a terrific, there's definitely not a one size fits all solution. So, okay, that.
The ad hoc committee recommended that the ad hoc committee removed that line from the draft and does not recommend that 100-foot.
Okay.
And we didn't recommend an alternative setback of any kind either. Yep.
Okay.
It was simply omitted.
Yep, thank you.
Right, but the other thing you look at too is that from an agricultural regulation, putting setbacks and buffers between adjacent properties wouldn't fit in the agricultural regulations, it would fit in the subdivision regulations. Am I correct in that, Nate? So putting something in the regulations on farming to say that the adjacent property, if developed, has to have a setback, nobody would look in the farming regulations to go look for that setback. It actually would belong in a subdivision or conservation subdivision regulation to say that it should be setbacks from farms.
That's correct, and that's the proposal that has been proposed in a couple of different places. I'm not sure if it's been implemented anywhere, but essentially, when there is a new subdivision that abuts an existing agricultural use, then some of the open space should be directed in that buffer zone. But that would be a subdivision regulation, not a ag zoning regulation. You're correct.
Mr. Soms.
Thank you for that discussion. I had many of the same questions that Councillor Ingalls had. I know that we're going to hear from Mr. Treaster, and so I read his 19-page document. I also read Karen Parkinson's letter, and I thought both of them made good points. I'll address Karen Parkinson first. As we saw when the first regulations were rolled out, we had this huge public reaction. And Ms. Parkinson is suggesting that there should be a public hearing. And I'm not sure that there won't be. I think that's maybe something under the purview of planning, but I just want to comment that I think it would be a very good idea to get these regs out there for a public hearing to make sure we haven't got any other hidden time bombs. The other thing is that in reading Mr. Treaster's documents, some of the language is just not clear enough, and unclear language can get us in trouble in court. So I know it's painful to read a 19-page document. I can't imagine the time that Mr. Treaster spent writing it, but we've found it productive in the past to read his documents, refer them to the commission or the committee or the board, whoever's working on something, usually it's planning and zoning, and ask them to consider all of those comments and whether they want to take some or all of those comments under advisement and make some further changes. I find it's always really important to write a good document. I'm not a planner, I'm not a zoner, but I know from practice that, you have to say what you mean and mean what you say, and you have to get it out there in language that cannot be misinterpreted. So I'd like to suggest that the commission take both documents under advisement. Thank you.
Just a quick response, Mr. Soms, so that you understand, we accepted public comment at every meeting that we met, and we took those comments into consideration throughout the process. And Mr. Treaster, we're very grateful. He submitted a number of documents throughout the time, and a lot of his suggestions are included. Perhaps not all of them from the most recent letter that he submitted once our 6 meetings had completed. But we did take into consideration a lot of those things. Also, no one on the committee was an attorney or a zoning writer person. We were just all people from the community, and so it was certainly part of our recommendation that the town's attorney look over things. And as I said from the beginning, this was only ever intended to be another draft. It was not a final version, and I tried to make that clear in the report.
Yeah, thank you. Totally understood.
If this isn't a polished draft,
right?
We didn't have the means to create a polished draft.
And it's hard work to write a document like this. It's something I wouldn't want to undertake. But regarding the comment about public meeting, we all see on Facebook all the time people saying, hey, I didn't know about this. Well, public hearings are one good way to get the word out and provide an opportunity. Public comment at a regular meeting meetings are usually poorly attended. We've got far more people at this meeting than we normally do. So I do think a public hearing, and maybe Nate can comment on that, whether you plan to do that.
So, well, a couple of comments. So the first one is that, way back last summer, the Planning and Zoning Commission had a public workshop on the draft regulations, right? And that's what started this, was that public workshop and attendance at that public workshop. So, again, on the response of whether or not there was, room for public comment, there's been lots of room for public comment, and we've received it all and keep processing it. Then, at the risk of repeating myself, so the process for regulation amendment requires a public hearing. So absolutely moving this regulation forward, there will be a public hearing. The current plan on the table is prior to holding the public hearing, which is a statutory requirement, we will hold a public workshop, which is a more informal version of that, because we know that as the draft regulation goes through staff and our attorney, there will be some changes. And so we think it's probably worth holding that public workshop before we kick off the process. That would, of course, include a public hearing.
Excellent, thank you.
Do any other town councilors have any questions or comments? Hillary.
So, I read through these regulations and also Treaster's comments on them. And thank you, Mr. Treaster, for your comments. I think they were very good. I do have concerns about how far we want to regulate events like weddings and other events, corporate, get-togethers, all that. And I do think that's something that needs to be looked at. I do think that will hinder future economic development in this town. And I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you. Any other town councilors have questions or comments? Well, thank you very much, Allyson, and your committee, and special thanks that you completed your task in the 6 months you were allotted. I attended the first couple of meetings and I wasn't quite sure you would get there, but as Mr. Woody said, it started to move along pretty smoothly. So I really appreciate all of those who stepped forward, volunteered, and spent all of that time working together. I do want to clarify one thing because there seems to have been some confusion, and that is the town council is not here to approve the report or recommend the report or forward the report with comment. We will forward the report to the Planning and Zoning Commission with any comments we receive. For instance, the comments from Mr. Treaster and Mrs. Parkinson. But it is not our job as a town council to make recommendations or approve zoning matters. We can get into a little bit of hot water for that, as we've been reminded in the past. So we will simply tonight be forwarding this report to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And I wanted to say that before we get into residents and property owners part of the meeting, because whatever you say does not affect how we're going to move forward as a town council. I think your comments would be better served by bringing them to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And however, I certainly, if you have comments, you're certainly welcome to give them, but it won't affect the decision of the council. We are simply, and I can't say this enough because only because we've had comments about it, that we will not be approving, we will not be recommending, we will simply be referring this document to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Thank you again. Okay, that being said, are there any residents and property owners who wish to speak at this time?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll go second.
Who is going first? I can't see.
Okay, this is Jim Harwood. I'm at 10 Eska Drive. And I think I brought to some of your attentions now, I know you, Linda, and Fred, about the illegal bed and breakfast that's been operating since April at 6 Eska Drive. I don't want to go through all the litany of the noise infractions that they've had relative to the ordinance. I'd like to focus on things that have gone on after October 3rd. They had an extremely loud party October 3rd that culminated in an explosion in their backyard about 1:15 a.m. We called the owner. I highlighted the ordinance sections on noise disruption and the quiet time. And then we came to the land use office on the 4th. When we filed the formal complaint, we found out that there was no permit or application on file from the owners. And yet I directed the Office of Land Use to the Airbnb website for the owners. Since the 4th, there's been a continuous stream of renters coming into the place. And so in anticipation of this meeting, I went to the land office to try to get an update on where they were and found that nothing had been done. And so after a lengthy discussion with the people at the land office, and then a letter to Airbnb and an email to Linda, who got Fred involved, apparently there's been cease and desist letters sent to the owners. My question is, okay, now they have 30 more days before they have to cease and desist, according to that letter from what they told me at the land use office. So that's now 60 days since we filed the formal complaint indicating that they were operating illegally and hadn't bothered to get a permit. So my question is, if the town doesn't enforce this ordinance, what good is it? Anybody in town then can start having renters without having to file anything with the town, without having to obey the ordinances. So when other people find out that this is the type of thing, apparently the land use office told me there were 4 others that were also operating illegally. And so my question is, if a lot of people find out that the town is not enforcing this ordinance, then they can all start renting their houses without any permits and without any repercussions. And I don't understand that. So that's what I have. I'll yield back.
Thank you for your comments. Just to follow up on, although we don't usually get into a back and forth exchange here, I'll just briefly say that I received your email today and did respond with what I knew. Mayor Allen did follow up. The ordinance comes up for renewal next year to follow up with these kind of concerns and issues. I expect there will be some changes. It is a legal use once they have filled an application, so that's not up for debate. But let the mayor follow up with what he has done to date.
So yeah, Jim, thank you. And I'm sorry to see that it's taken as long as it has for your issue. But I did have a meeting today with the town planner. Our zoning enforcement official unfortunately resigned. We are one of 5 towns in southeastern Connecticut that are without one right now. So we're trying to cobble together some efforts from multiple people to get it done. But those letters did go out now. And he's going to have to, the owner of 6 ESCA is going to have to respond to us on that. And the other thing that's part of the short-term rental ordinance is the issues, the very same issues that you brought up tonight with what was going on at that house next door is exactly what is not allowed to happen with a legal short-term rental. So action will happen there. And I apologize that more hasn't to date, but it is now.
So Fred, let me ask you a quick question, follow up to that. So if they do continue after they have filled out an application and they get permission, what are the consequences? I mean, it seems like I'm a lame duck here. There's nothing I can do. I've been in town 27 years. My wife and I are retiring, have decided to retire to this place. We've probably paid in the amount of over $200,000 in taxes to the town over the 27 years. And yet it seems like any group of party animals that want to come over and have an evening of screaming and yelling and debacle up until 4 in the morning. And I have no consequence except for filling out a little form and sending it in. And then like I told you, the last time I did that, nothing happened for 3 weeks. So I'm a little bit at a loss of what I'm supposed to do. as a
Okay,
taxpayer.
what I would like you to do is call my office tomorrow, because as Chairwoman Davis said, this is not a forum for a back and forth. But I am happy to have you call me in the morning, and we will discuss how that moves forward and what happens with people that don't follow the rules once they've been formally notified. Thank you, Jim.
Okay, I'll do that. Thanks. Fred.
Okay, thank you.
I would also say that we should keep notes on these situations so that when it comes up for renewal, we have in a file. Mrs. McGrattan is the chairman of the committee that will be taking it up. It'll be in the file, and we can refer to those complaints that have come through during this period. So we do thank you for bringing it to our attention, so we know what to look at when it does come up for renewal.
Okay, so Linda, starting on the 4th, I've been keeping notes, but I didn't keep notes through May, June, and July. So I don't have
No,
any.
I'm not
record-
I'm sorry, I'm not talking about your specific notes.
Okay.
I'm talking about this specific situation
Mhm.
and the correspondence you've had with myself and the mayor. We just want to put it in a file that this was a situation that came up and that we hope to be able to address your particular issue. And that is what I heard the most was that the 60 days is a very long time, especially in the summer, to have to deal with it. So that's what we'll forward. Whoops, I'm sorry.
I'm losing your sound, Linda.
You're losing me?
There you are. I can hear you now. Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let me turn my volume up. So anyway, we will continue to build a file. So because we have more than one situation in town. Some have applied for the permit, and there's still situations. So we want to make sure we make it better. And this would be the start of it.
All right. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, Jim. Are there any residents or property owners who wish to speak at this time? Mr. Kalstein.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, and fellow residents of Ledyard. My name is Todd Talstein. I also live on Eska Drive, and I'm pretty pleased with the discussion we've had tonight. And I'm a good friend of Mr. Harwood, but I just wanted to bring it to the attention of the council that they're here that Mr. Harwood is not a one-off. He is not the only one in the neighborhood that is concerned about this and is interested in having the town take action. So look forward to working with you all here in the next coming weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, public comments? Mr. Treaster.
Thank you. My name is Eric Treaster, 10 Huntington Way, and I'd like to thank the chairman for allowing me to address the council. The agenda shows that you will be making a decision this evening on a motion to accept the ad hoc committee's final report and to refer it to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Based on my August 23rd assessment, which lists about 140 omissions, errors, and policy deficiencies, in my opinion, it is clear that the proposed regulations should not be accepted. I also believe that many of the committee's proposed regulations are not necessary. The premise of the committee's efforts and proposed regulations appears to be that Ledyard farms and the accessory uses of those farms need more regulations. My review tends to show the opposite. Connecticut's right to farm laws, the Connecticut Department of Agricultural regulations, zoning's existing farm signage and setback requirements, Ledgelight Health District regulations, the Department of Health regulations, the DEEP regulations, our animal husbandry and home occupation regulations. Taken all together, farms are under tremendous authority and regulation already. There have been few problems on farms, in my opinion, to justify a need to adopt more stringent regulations and to require costly site plans and complicated zoning permits. The town does not regulate similar uses such as weddings and parties that are not on farms? Why are they being regulated if they are on farms? I do not know what the criteria are that you will be using this evening to accept or not accept the proposed regulations. Unless the criteria are clear, a decision to accept the proposed regulations may be interpreted by the public that you believe farms do indeed need more regulations. And unless the criteria are clear, your acceptance will also create the appearance that you are okay with the regulations that are knowingly incomplete, erroneous, and appear to be unnecessary. I urge you not to accept the regulations that intentionally limit the income from non-agricultural uses of large historic farms. I do want to thank you for reading all 19 pages of what is admittedly an uninteresting and tedious document. But reading the entire assessment is necessary to make an informed decision if the council should or should not accept the proposed regulations. As stated in my assessment, I want to emphasize that the ad hoc committee should be commended for volunteering and tackling an exceptionally difficult task. It is difficult to create clear, lawful zoning regulations that are consistent with the enabling statutes and balance competing property rights. The committee's task was also difficult because people have different opinions on what is necessary, right, and appropriate. Considering the difficulty and limited time to complete its task, the committee did well and deserves praise. I will be available this evening to answer any questions you may have regarding my assessment of the proposed regulations. And again, thank you for letting me address the council. Thank you.
Do any other residents or property owners have comments at this time? Mr. Cherry.
Good evening, Mike Cherry, 5 Whippoorwill Drive. Couple of quick comments. Back when we were talking about Airbnb and should it be a zoning reg, should it be a statute, should it be an ordinance? If it's in zoning, the legal process to redress zoning takes time. So as you go forward, you may want to make sure that we're not bound by something in zoning that gives all these rights of redress and prevents us from doing more than writing a letter. Just a thought. As my time on the Planning and Zoning Commission sunsets here shortly, I want to say a couple of things. I know a lot of people have opinions. A lot of people made observations. A lot of people have facts. I would like to commend Allyson and her team for a tremendous undertaking done well. I'd like to echo Chairman Davis's comment that they're not here to approve. They're here to just say the committee finished their work and pass it on to those that have the authority to make changes to the zoning regs. So thank you. The quick answer to Andra's question comes from a publication written by the Connecticut Farm Bureau and Council of CCM. And it recommends a 100-foot buffer for new subdivisions adjacent to a farm with livestock. Now, how much is livestock? If you have a big dairy farm, yeah, you probably need a pretty good buffer. If you got a couple animals or you got fields that you're farming or animals that are grazing, maybe not. So all this is going to go back to zoning, go to the workshop, bring your facts, bring your opinions, bring your observations, but know that facts and observations weigh more heavily in a lot of cases than opinions, because everybody has an opinion, as Mr. Treister alluded to. They're all different. If you can back it up with something that some authority, the Farm Bureau, CCM, other towns that have regs that work, if you could bring those to the then zoning commission, it will really help them. Once again, I would like to commend Allyson and her team for a task well done. And it's kind of like, Allyson, you're going to get a title of Chief Cat Herder. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cherry. Any other public comments? Roxanne, if you see anybody with their hand raised, can you let me know?
I will, yes. A gentleman named, nope, I guess that's not. Okay, it looks good.
So there are no other comments at this time?
Oh, yes, there's a gentleman named Walter and someone. I
Walter,
don't see their,
So that's the last name, it's Watrous. Hi.
oh,
hi.
Watrous.
No.
Okay, that's what I was there. I'm trying to figure this out, Deb. I don't know.
Sorry if I speak.
Could you state your name and address for the record?
Sure. My name is Rachel. I'm on 1695 Center Groton Road.
I'm trying to figure this out, Deb, over here, and I haven't been able.
And thank you for letting me speak. I did want to talk about the ad hoc committee, and I want to thank Allyson and the rest of the committee for all of the work that you put into this. It's a lot of effort, and it took a lot of time. And I think that this effort shows how much you care about our town and about the farms in our town. And I want to just say that I appreciate all of what you've done. And while maybe I don't agree with the outcome, I want to make sure that you know how much I appreciate the effort and the work that you put into this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Anyone else like to speak at this time?
Hello?
Hello?
No, can't get it. Recording to the chat.
Hello?
I don't know.
I'm not sure who's speaking.
We see you, Walter. We can see you.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Deborah Guth. This is my husband, Walter Guth. We're at 18 Eska Drive, and we would just like to chime in that we are opposed to the Airbnb as well. There has been way too many people. It's above the actual allotment of people that have been staying in the house over these various weekends and during the week. This past weekend, I was coming home, and they're not supposed to be working on their cars, but one of the residents was working on their car in the street. And there's been loud noises coming from the house. It's just been a three-ring circus. And this is supposed to be a quiet family neighborhood, and this is not a family neighborhood when these people from outside of Ledyard are moving in, and it's very disturbing. And a lot of people on our street and on Seabury and some of the other streets in our neighborhood in Parsonage Hill Manor are very disturbed and very worried about this is going to if this doesn't get stopped, and if it continues, certain families or certain individuals might start buying up more and more properties, and then people are just going to start leaving. It's real. This is not something that can be pushed aside. It really has to be looked at, because we're the ones who we're going to start suffering, and we're already suffering as it is.
Thank you for your comments. We have certainly heard you, and we will continue to work forward to some solutions. And again, it does come up for the ordinance itself does come up for renewal. So you'll have plenty of opportunity at that time to speak again and give input. Is there anyone else that would like to make public comment at this time? Walt, oh, you're muted. Anyone else? Okay, hearing none, we will now move on to any committee, commission, or board reports. I see a couple of commissions and committees. Anyone have to make a report? Moving on to comments of town councilors. Any comments? Mrs. Engel.
Sorry, Councilor Davis, I do have the Board of Ed report.
No, that would be anybody like, let's say, somebody from planning and zoning, those that are actually from those committees.
Right, but the liaison reports were under there.
The liaison reports go into the subcommittee in liaison reports. Item.
In the wrong part of the agenda. Apologies.
Oh, no apologies necessary. Any town councilor comments at this time? Okay, I would just like to state that Mr. Treister and I clearly have a different definition of accept. And if we were meeting in person, Mrs. Angelini could hand me the report, which I would accept, and then hand it to Mr. Woody. And that would be the extent of our involvement. And that would be the vote we're taking this evening. We are not endorsing this. We are not approving this. We are not recommending it. We are accepting it. And that is the extent of it. And I hope everybody remembers that when they're voting, because I think Mr. Treister has made it way more confusing than it needs to be. Next item, review and approval of prior meeting minutes. I will entertain a motion for special and regular meeting minutes of July 28th.
So move, Councilor Dombrowski.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Roxanne, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Soms,
Yes.
Mr. Washington,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Evans,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingles,
Yes.
Mr. Marshall,
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. You have your communication list on the portal. I did make one recommendation, but I forget what it is already. Roxanne, what did I recommend to land use?
To review the Agricultural Commission's ordinance. They would like to expand the scope of their work.
Thank you. I also have one other recommendation, and sorry to surprise you. This would also be Mr. Dombrowski's committee, and that is there has been some discussion about paving that's happening in this Christie Hill area, and the fact that we spend the money to pave, and then Southeastern Connecticut Water Authority tears up the roads because their system is so antiquated. And because it continues to fail, roads get dug up and our nice new paving gets spoiled. Other towns have ordinances protecting against this, which say that if a not a municipality, if a service or if a utility destroys our road, they're responsible for repairing. I would suggest we look into that. Mr. Allen, Mayor Allen, you probably have a comment on that as well. You may have seen the discussion. There's a lot of frustration about it.
Yeah, it's happened. Last year we had a couple roads that were paved, and within 2 weeks they were dug up with backhoes to do repairs. And it's just so counterproductive to do a road only to find that 2 weeks later they tear the pavement up. And part of the problem is when the patches are put back down, the patches are not back to like a town road spec, if you will, in terms of how it's finished. So it creates a very uneven surface, usually causes a problem when it's plowing season as well, because the plows catch the poorly patched areas. So I'm happy to take part. If that's going to move ahead as an ordinance, I will happily take part in that.
Thank you, Mayor. And I know that there are other towns that have ordinances you may be able to find.
Excuse me, Councilor.
Yeah.
This is Mike Washington. Just as a record, working for DOT, we see this all the time. And what we ended up having to do is on the state roads, if you ever notice, if you see a utility come down a state road, shortly after that, the utility has to pay from the center line to the gutter line on which they were on. And that's just a standard, because we saw for many, many years, I've been here 35 years, and the running joke was if we paved the road, a utility company was coming in 2 weeks later to dig it up. And that's how we end up working around it. And that's a standard for the DOT. And many towns have that exact standard.
Very good. Thank you for that contribution. You know your charge, Mr. Dombrowski.
Very aware. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Subcommittee liaison reports. Let's start with admin.
The administration committee had a special meeting on August the 18th to make recommendations for reappointments to different commissions, and it is on the agenda for tonight's meeting.
Thank you. Any questions for admin? Community relations.
The Community Relations Committee did not meet. We are scheduled to meet on September 1st for our next meeting.
Thank you. Any questions for Community Relations? Hearing none. Finance.
Finance has not met. Our next meeting is next Wednesday.
Thank you. Any questions for Finance? Thank you. Land Use.
Land use also has not met. I have no report.
Thank you. Okay, liaison reports. I'll start with you, Ms. Singles. Whoops.
Andre, you're muted.
Yeah, okay. So the Board of Ed met on August 18th for their regular meeting. 3 points. The bus runs will be posted on August 23rd, which I guess was 2 days ago, or the 25th. So the bus runs were posted on Monday, after which feedback will be received and trial runs will be performed and final runs will be complete by the end of the week. Second point is that homeschooling numbers are double what they were prior to COVID. And third point is that the board unanimously passed the Ledyard Public Schools Safe Return to In-Person Instruction and Continuity of Services Plan. This plan includes information on masks, distancing, transportation, cafeteria, cleaning the buildings, ventilation, and quite a bit more. The document can be found on the Ledyard Schools website, which is ledyard.net, and that is my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Counselor Ingalls? Mr. Marshall.
Hi, Andra. A quick question for you. The Board of Ed decided to get rid of the van run in Ledyard. So we were paying for one driver and one aide to do a run, and now they're subbing it out to Curtin. So now we're paying, and they split the run up. So now we're paying 2 drivers and 2 aides. Do you know why they did that?
No. Let me take that down and I'll forward that to Chairman Favory. So this is about the hubs for, this is about the bus hubs.
Yes, the special needs run.
Okay. Thank you for the question. I'll forward it to Chairman Favory.
Okay, thank you.
Any other liaison reports? Mr. Marshall.
Good evening, everybody. The building committee met a few weeks back. Let me find my glasses here real quick. So I don't know if this is good news or bad news, but they're bringing in another superintendent to oversee the school projects. And he's already put together a bunch of contractors to come in and take care of their work. And for clarification, the other guy, Dan, he was a project manager, a poor one at that, but that's just my opinion. So he brought in more contractors. I don't know where they're at this point. We'll find out at our next meeting. There have been no items removed from the punch list in the last 4 or 5 weeks. The schools were empty. The committee's not happy about it, and that was made quite clear at the last meeting also. This guy, the new guy, his name is Corey. I think I worked with him quite a few years ago in Springfield. Seemed like a decent guy, so we'll see how well he does. The middle school radon system is up and running, so that's good news. We have one room that is colder than the other ones. So they're talking about possibly some supplemental heat rather than trying to fix the problem. The one problem we did think is resolved is we discovered that the middle school was receiving higher than normal voltage. Johnson Controls found it, and they believe that could be causing some of the problems with the heating and cooling system. So we'll find out if that problem has fixed itself. Eversource has fixed the voltage problem at their end. I did speak with a technician that I'm working with currently. He said I could definitely cause problems with the controls. So I'll have to wait and see what happens. Maybe we're fixed now. And that's my report.
Mr. Marshall, do you know what the status is of the capital improvement items that we forwarded to the building committee, that the town council forwarded? A whole list of capital improvement items?
They're in the process of putting together RFPs.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure they were received and there was things moving forward.
Yes, we did discuss it. And they're in the process of putting together the request for quotes and proposals as we speak.
Thank you. Any other liaison reports? Mr. Songs.
So I'm going to apologize in advance. I've got another long WPCA report, but it's all good stuff. And I'm very proud of the work they're doing. They're very productive. They met last night. No water operations were affected by Tropical Storm Henry, except that the Holmberg tank generators ran while the power was temporarily off. A tank containing organic materials collected during the cleanup operation at the former Lou's Garage was permitted to be disposed of at the wastewater treatment facility, and that's all on the up and up. The bugs in the treatment facility do eat petrochemicals. And here's the good news. Weston and Sampson has presented a preliminary report on the Ledyard Center sewer study and the multimodal pathway along Colonel Ledyard Highway. The wastewater treatment facility has excess capacity at present and can take an additional 54,000 more gallons per day up to its capacity of 260,000 gallons. And this is due to a 40,000 gallon per day reduction in infiltration and inflow. That's leakage from pipes. It's people pumping septic systems, or not septics, but some pumps into their sewer. And the WPCA has spent a lot of time, specifically the plant supervisor, reducing that. So Weston and Sampson is recommending a phased project using the existing low pressure line from Ledyard High School to the treatment plant, starting, so the new line will start at the Route 117 junction with Colonel Ledyard Highway and run to Ledyard High School. And there will be a third and final phase, which would then replace that low pressure line bottleneck with a 6-inch line going from the high school to the plant. The second phase would be paid for by developers who would pay for extensions into their own parcels along Fairway Drive. The existing buildings in Ledyard Center would not be served by this line because it runs through Fairway Drive. It does not come out and run up Route 117. I had some concerns about that. We discussed it, and I understand the thinking. This is a preliminary report, and I've recommended they meet with the mayor and the planner next. The cost for the initial phase is estimated at $1.4 million. Weston and Sampson calculated from past Ledyard Center development plans that full build out of Ledyard Center would result in about 500 equivalent dwelling units. And the third and final phase would cost $950,000 with the line connecting the high school to the treatment plant when that's replaced. And that also includes a line going along Fairway Drive to the cul-de-sac. And from that point forward will be paid for by developers. Future build out on the west side of Route 117 could serve an additional or create usage from an additional 1,000 equivalent dwelling units. However, the treatment plant doesn't have the capacity to support that much build out. So the EDUs would have to be reduced, and one developer could potentially use all of the estimated excess capacity. So this is something for planning as well as WPCA to take under consideration. I believe, and I spoke with the chair this afternoon at the farmers market, I believe the towns do have the right to reserve capacity for specific projects so that one developer can't take all of it. So future infiltration and inflow reduction could also help increase future capacity further, but I personally think that's likely due to the work that's already been done. Good news, the Connecticut DECD Communities Challenge allows towns to use ARPA funding as matching funds. Therefore, this project could be completed with only half of the ARPA funds we were planning or contemplating using. However, we need to look at the timelines because the deadline is fall 2021 for the intent to apply, and winter 2021 is expected to be the application deadline. The WPCA needs to compare that timeline with the ARPA funding timeline to make sure we can do this. The town center to Ledyard High School pipe diameter is proposed to be 6 inches. Right now, right now it's a 3-inch line. Inside diameter is only 2.5 inches. So that line is a bottleneck, which I think we all know. But the good news is we wouldn't have to replace that until later because the first phase of the project wouldn't put that much more sewage through the line. So that's all for that project. And as I say, I've recommended that they get in touch with the mayor to meet with him and present this report, meet with the town planner too. Also, Fox Run meter is ordered. It will be installed as soon as it arrives. That's important because Fox Run has a meter that occasionally bypasses meaning they get free water. This has been going on for years. So we're finally resolving that. Also, the Gallup Hill tank demolition bids have been received. The winning bid is from Stanford Wrecking for $122,000, which is the lowest bid, and they are also a highly rated contractor. The WPCA has undesignated capital to pay for that, but they're also putting together a list of other pump stations that need to be demolished to reduce the town's liability, and are in discussion to prioritize, get estimates, and then see if we can jump in on the town bonding for the high school roofs. And if we have to bond any money for that demolition, we'd get it at a much lower rate. There's no further news on the interconnection with Norwich Public Utilities over Pocatonic Cove. They're still waiting for a tank inspection on the Ledyard Center tank because they're shorthanded, and the one person who was going to climb the tank cut his hand. So now they're talking with Jim Mann about using the ladder truck to get up there. So more to come on that. Past due receivables were $11,000 last month, which is more in line with past practice. And that's my report. Thank you for listening.
Well, thank you, Mr. Solms. Some good news.
Yep.
Anyone have any questions from Mr. Solms? Any other liaison reports? The farmers market has 3 markets left. We'll take a couple of weeks off, and then we begin the fall market, which will start mid-October and run into December this year. So that is my report. Any other reports? Mayor Allen.
Good evening, everybody. Since we followed Aidan Schuler tonight, I thought I would bring up 2 additional younger people, younger than Aidan, that have also started to do some things that maybe they'll follow in Aidan's footsteps too. One of them is Tyler Allen. He has been working at the food pantry assembling what they're calling these meal kits. And that is in conjunction with a young lady named Grace Eldridge. She is a young Girl Scout who will be seeking her Silver Award. And what she has done is she has created a YouTube channel called Food Pantry Feasts. And she has created a cookbook that includes 20 recipes of all foods that you will find in the Ledyard Food Pantry. And it's designed to help those that access the food pantry to see different ways that they can use the food that we have to cook with. So if you look at the Ledyard Food Pantry's Facebook page, you'll find Grace's first recipe on there, which is chili mac. So huge thank you to both these young people. Really, it's volunteers and it's people that are willing to do things like that really make our town what it is. Not going to share a whole lot about Tropical Storm Henri. We did prepare the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center in the high school as a worst case scenario. We also prepared what we call EOC Light, which is a smaller version of the Emergency Operations Center in the Ledyard Firehouse. We were prepared to use it. We had our emergency operations manager there at 4 a.m. on Sunday to be ready to go. As luck would have it, the storm tracked a good bit east of us and wasn't as bad. We topped out at about 1,100 outages. We were down to 28 by Monday morning. We were down to two outages by Monday afternoon and 0 by 7:30 on Tuesday morning. That, of course, changed by the end of Tuesday night when additional tree damage that had kind of broken but not come down during the storm finally decided to let go. So we had some additional outages in the Highlands, and we also had some in Gales Ferry as a result of a transformer and wire fire in front of Village Pizza on Route 12. So I would say all in all, we did pretty well in this storm. Some people might have gotten tired of hearing the Everbridge calls or the text messages about various road closures, but I was happy to see that the police utilized that so that people were aware, because at one time we had Route 214 and Route 12 closed, which creates an interesting scenario if somebody has to get around, especially for emergency services. So I think we did pretty well with that. Just a notice for people too that on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays, the transfer station is open from 9 to 3:30. So people that do have brush, limbs, and leaves can certainly take it there for no fee. COVID update, it seems the Delta variant, it represents 90% of our cases at this point. It's ramping up. The good news with the Delta variant appears to be that it's a tighter, steeper bell curve. So it's as of today's COVID call that we had with the health districts, it looks like we may be plateauing right now with the Delta variant, and then we'll be coming down very quickly, we hope. We had 36 new cases in town in the last 2 weeks. There are 30 hospitalizations in New London County right now. Thankfully, only 3 are in the intensive care units. So that's good news. The last thing that I'll say about the COVID side of it, it is still an unvaccinated issue. Those that are unvaccinated are 5 times more likely to contract COVID and 29 times more likely to be hospitalized. So it's a big deal. Vaccination wise, the town of Ledyard is at 59.13% vaccinated. The state as a whole is at 65.2%. So in New London County, Ledyard is 7th out of the 21 towns in New London County in terms of their vaccination status level. And we are 5th in terms of towns similar in population size. So we follow Stonington after Colchester, Waterford, East Lyme, and Stonington. Road restoration work, we're still working on. We just did a microsurface of Spicer Hill Extension, Church Hill, Haley Road. We're doing a mill and overlay on East Drive, Hillside, Laurel Leaf, so we're working the whole Christie Hill area. We're hoping to complete all of that in this paving season, but because the paving crews got here later than we had hoped, because July was such a rainy month, a lot of work was delayed, so it also delayed the start here. So we are hopeful on that. The Browns Crossing Bridge, if you go down to Browns Crossing Road, you will see the bridge is complete. It was completed ahead of schedule. It is open for the residents to cross at this point, but it has not been accepted by the town of Ledyard yet. Our public works director and town engineer very wisely hired an independent engineering consultant to do a review of the bridge to be sure that what we get is what was supposed to be delivered. So that that review is pending, and once that comes forward, we'll know whether we're going to own that bridge or not. We also held our public information session regarding the LOTSIP grant. That's the $2.87 million grant for the multimodal path from Ledyard Center to the Ledyard High School. We had 5 residents in attendance. We had more than 150 comments on social media for those projects. I will say that out of the 150 comments, I believe 2 of them were opposed, not necessarily opposed so much as kind of like, we don't need that. Nobody walks, nobody uses bikes, stuff like that. One was questioning who was going to be responsible for handling the snow removal, and the overwhelming remainder were very much in favor of this. So I'm kind of excited about it. It's the town's investment is about $115,000 for almost a $3 million project. It also includes the realignment of Gallop Hill Road so that when people cross Gallop Hill Road at the bottom where it meets Colonel Ledyard Highway, it will turn that into more of a T intersection as opposed to the 45-degree Y that it is now, which will slow, they call it calming the traffic. I call it slowing the traffic to make that turn, which is really important for pedestrians and for cyclists alike. So, but the plan is online now. So that was a question that was raised, was whether somebody couldn't attend the public workshop, if they could see the PowerPoint presentation that is on the town's website. I did post that on social media as well, so people can see that. And the plan itself, which is about 10 feet long, a really beautiful presentation that they did full color, is posted in the town hall in the hallway. So if you're heading from the front of the building towards the back, you would see that right there on the left side as you head down the hallway. So if you want to come look at it, please do. Our ZEO vacancy, zoning enforcement officer, is still vacant. The job has been posted for almost 2 months now. We have had 0 applications. I may have mentioned this previously, but there are 19 zoning enforcement official positions that are vacant in the state of Connecticut, and there are 5 of those reside right here in southeastern Connecticut. So it's a little bit challenging. I have been working with the Council of Governments to see if we could find a shared position so that we could hire somebody that could work for, say, Preston and or Ledyard and or North Stonington. There are several other towns that are also nearby that are also having a need. Met with Ocean State Job Lot Management going back to August 9th. They invited me down to the store in Gales Ferry, where they presented me with a generous gift card to be used for social services for the purchase of back to school supplies and backpacks. It was a very gracious gift. I would thank Lisa Turner for that. She works at Job Lot and she is also a Gales Ferry resident. So great opportunity, and we really appreciate them thinking of us here in town. And then the last thing that I would share with you is the CTASC grant, which we applied for upgrading our audio visual in the annex. We did receive that grant. That was just received last week. So we are now working towards obtaining new cameras, audio, and computers to operate that equipment. So when that comes together, not only for hybrid meetings, but when we are posting to the public service, public TV cable access, that will be an improvement, because the last time we got the grant was about 10 years ago. So as you know, 10 years on technology might as well be a century. So it's going to be a big improvement, and we're looking forward to seeing that. And that is all I have for right now.
Thank you, Mayor. Anyone have any questions for the mayor? Mayor, I know you get to have a meeting with our liaison from Eversource, and I think I've already passed this along to you, but the frustration that I heard the most was that people were getting phone calls saying their power had been restored when it was never out to begin with, or they were getting a message saying it had been restored when it wasn't. And so that seemed to be frustrating, and that seems to be kind of an easy fix for them. So something to pass along.
Yes, that was probably the overwhelming majority of the comments with this storm was people receiving text messages saying, congratulations, your power has been restored, or good news, your power has been restored. And it wasn't, and the lines were still in the yard. And this is something that we dealt with in the last storm too, the very same thing. So that is the top priority when our liaison comes to town, which will be tomorrow. We are going to share that with her to say, what can we do to get this right? Because your system, and even the outage map still wasn't right. And that outage map was a replacement from a couple years ago, and it's still not working effectively. So it's not delivering accurate information.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for the mayor? Thank you, Mayor. Moving on to old business, we have no old business. Would anybody like to amend the agenda under new business? Hearing none. Admin, Councilor McGrattan.
Okay. I make a motion to reappoint Mr. Michael Morelli, a Democrat, of 4 Leabrook Drive, to the Agricultural Commission for a 3-year term ending September the 24th, 2024.
Is there a second, please?
Hillary Evans.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Roxanne, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Washington,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Evans,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingles,
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan,
Yes.
oh my God. Mr. Soms.
Yes.
Okay, so 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion
John had
carries.
to leave. John had to leave us to go to work.
Motion carries. Next item.
I make a motion to reappoint the following members to the Southeastern Connecticut Water Authority for a 2-year term ending August 31st, 2023. Mr. Michael Cherry, unaffiliated, 5 Whippoorwill Drive, Gales Ferry, to serve as the mayor's representative. And Mr. James Harris, Republican, of 8 Whippoorwill Drive, Gales Ferry.
Second.
Oh, sorry. You beat me.
Any discussion? Roxanne, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Evans,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingles,
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan,
Yes.
Mr. Soms,
Yes.
Mr. Washington,
Yes.
7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Next item. Kevin, is that yours?
I'll make it though. I don't know. I read it.
I think it's Bill and Finance.
Yeah, but I think it's finance.
Oh, Finance. Bill, would you
Okay.
like to take this? Go ahead.
Yep, this is Counselor Soms. I move to approve a certified resolution, the legislative body affordable housing plan grant technical assistance program round 2. Town of Ledyard is contained in the draft dated August 18, 2021.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Discussion.
So this is something I believe we acted on previously. It is for technical grant writing assistance for the affordable housing program. I believe it's to help with conducting an assessment. And I beg anyone to correct me if I've got that wrong. But I believe this is round 2. We did round 1 a while ago.
Yeah, this is just to add to what Councilor Soms said. This is the state requires us to restate the resolution, and it has to be fresh within 30 days. And the last time we did this was beyond that. So they always want us to have one that's the most recent, so that we're just restating it.
We're seeing more of that.
Thank you. Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Dombrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Evans,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingles,
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan,
Yes.
Mr. Soms,
Yes.
Mr. Washington,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Next item.
I make a motion to accept and refer the final report of the ad hoc committee to develop a zoning regulation amendment for agricultural uses dated June 30th, 2021 to the Planning and Zoning Commission. In addition, disband the ad hoc committee to develop a zoning regulation amendment for agricultural uses.
Second, Counselor Washington.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
No, just clarifying what you had said earlier, Linda. We are merely accepting the report and passing it on to the zoning and regulation, planning and zoning for them to have further discussion, meetings, open public hearings, and hopefully workshops. As you alluded to earlier, state statute prohibits us from making any zoning regulations or amendments.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roxanne, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Evans,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingles,
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan,
Yes.
Mr. Soms,
Yes.
Mr. Washington,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Yes.
7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. And that concludes our agenda. I just had one item, and that is we have finally, after many, many, many years, ordered new chairs for the council chambers. For anyone who has ever sat in our council chairs, you know what kind of condition they were in. I hope we get to meet together in person in the future to use those chairs. But Roxanne has done an amazing amount of research, as you can imagine, including, because the space is so tight, a lot of regular desk chairs do not fit side by side. So she did all that research. We do have new curtains. If you have, we've been curtainless for many, many years as well. So we have made a few improvements, and I hope we'll get together soon, all of us, to see each other in a meeting in the future. Oh, that's right. Planning and zoning meets there as well, right? So this is good news for you folks too. Good. And with that, our next meeting is September, help me, Roxanne, September
9.
9th. So we will,
8.
we will see you in September. Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second, Hillary Evans.
Motion made and seconded. This meeting is adjourned without exception. And thank you, everybody, for coming. It's always nice to see 25 or 30 people attend a meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.